has been released from captivity after paying a ransom of 100 million naira. I know we discussed this story, you guys discussed the story in the headline, but I just wanted to add my voice. I am so heartbroken. This child is a victim of circumstance at this point, and Nigeria has failed her. I'll take some reactions before I come to you, Tundu. This is from Bucci, who wrote, "This has got me in tears. How can a child be born in captivity this way? How have we gone this bad as a country? What of the military? Why can't they do something to rescue these people?" Well, Titilayo wrote, "It can't get worse or messier than this. Terrorists abduct citizens, post their pictures, negotiate with the government, and finally operating their own maternity clinic where their victims give birth to babies unchallenged. Buhari-led APC government finally ceded power and sovereignty to terrorists." Over to you, Tunde.
Well, that's completely spot on, because they were able to get her, the mother, the expectant mother, was able to get medical attention. So we do know that there is a whole community supporting the terrorists. They have people supplying their food.
Okay. So this morning, I logged into my Interactive Brokers.
Nice.
So
That's Gmedia. Gmedia is okay.
awesome. So I just changed the settings so that anyone can share if they need to.
Okay.
And once TT's on there, I can make her a host. I can also.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
Well, I'm good.
And that's my daughter, Finny.
I can see I saw it as soon as I saw it, I said, okay, the DNA is there. Bola's DNA is permanently there. Finny, right?
Yes, nice to meet you.
How are you? How are you?
I'm fine.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, your dad is an old friend, a colleague, and brother. So mighty glad to get to
be part of this. Thank you for taking the time to do this for our organization. Are you normally based in Nigeria?
No, I'm a professor at the University of Missouri here.
I think I mixed you up with a different speaker. Sorry. I was getting you.
Thinking about Kole Sodipo.
Okay.
Kole Sodipo, who is based in Nigeria.
Got it.
But he has been involved in everything in Africa. Jimmy has been involved in all around Africa. So environmental and climate changes and
right.
Yeah.
Very cool. And Missouri, yes, awesome. That's really great. I'm really excited for the content that you all be sharing. I'm guessing you're pretty familiar with Zoom as well?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Because I know some of the speakers for other events, I usually have to tell them, if you want to share screen, I've said it that anyone can share screen.
Wonderful.
And yeah, I think those are the main things.
So Bola, I asked how many minutes I have so that I can.
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
All right. I'll try to not go finish even earlier than 20 minutes so that we can have a more have room for an interactive session. And
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is Missouri? What's the weather like?
Great. Spring weather is on us. So this is one of the best times of the year. So
we just got 17 degrees today. That was a good improvement. Centigrade, not Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay. Well, 17 is not that bad.
17, and we're moving up to 22. So
yeah, 17, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, even though the border around Weyburn area had some snow this week,
yeah,
that border of America and Canada had some snow in southern Saskatchewan, but we had a little bit of rain and not too bad.
Yeah. Let me turn off the lights here and see. I see that my head is bald.
Yeah, what happened to your hair, Jimmy?
I shave it.
You shave it.
I shave every.
And your brother lives he's on bushy, eh?
No, this is not better.
Uh,
What I had before was,
yeah.
I think was better.
Yeah. I think Fred lives is here. Fred lives is here, and I remember Fred and Charles. They had bushy hair, you know.
No, we gray very early.
Yeah.
So I am 100% gray.
Mm.
That's why, and I don't like to. I was dyeing it every week, every 2 weeks for a while. And then last year I decided, 2 years ago during the COVID thing, I started shaving my hair completely. So every 2 days I shave now. So I'm bald. I have hair. It's just that it's white hair.
If I shave, I would get my head very scratchy. So my hair is not yet black, but my beard is getting gray. And my sister commented that, you know, I don't know why you like to keep the gray. You're making yourself look old. So I said, for the occasion, I'll shave my beard.
So you shave them, yeah.
But the hair is still black for now. Femi Ogbomide became 60 a few days ago.
Look at that. I still haven't connected with that guy yet, even though we're quite close. But
Became 60, so they said he went up the 6th floor.
yeah, I guess I'm a year behind him. I've got a year to go.
Yeah, I have 3 years to go. I'm 57 now, so I just laughing at. I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "What happened? All your friends have climbed the 6th floor, and you're still here at the 5th." I said, "Well, yeah."
So how is my is this okay? Can you see
Yeah,
me?
you're good. You're good. Yeah,
Fairly,
you're
fairly
very good.
decently?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
very good. Very good. And when did you come back to the States?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Huh? I know you are a traveling guy. You go all over. Come back.
I know. This last trip, I was in 4 countries in 5 weeks.
Oh boy.
It was a lot of travel. Yeah. Mumbo, let me.
No problem.
Yeah.
So Auntie should be logging in soon, then I'll make her the other host.
Okay.
And then that way it should be good to go.
Okay.
This thing should be done soon, so I can quick see.
Hi, Eric. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can turn on my camera here. Let's see if this works. Okay.
Yeah, Kayode, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
A long time.
Yes.
I talked to your mom some time ago, and
Okay.
yeah, and when she celebrated her 80th birthday, and
Yes. It was always a
party.
great milestone and good party, you know, to go to. Yeah. So we thank God for her. She's
Yeah, I talked to Emeka about you. Emeka Lawson, remember him?
Oh yes, of course. Where is he now?
He's still in England. He's still in
Okay.
England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and we have Eric there. Eric is a professor here. He's from Cameroon. Eric, I thought you were from Congo before.
No, I'm from Cameroon.
So yeah, just a neighbor. You know, I thought you were from Congo all along.
Yeah. Cameroon, I'm from the English-speaking side of Cameroon.
Oh,
Okay.
right, yeah. You know, we have a friend, Professor Chumbo, Biban Chumbo.
Okay.
And he's I think he's English. He has been vice chancellor of many universities. He was in, and he's
And where is he now?
still in Cameroon. I spoke
Okay.
to him.
Because the name rings a bell to me.
Chumbo, I'm sure you guys must know him. He has been vice chancellor of 2 universities. Yeah, he's a linguist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the format again tonight? So three talks. I know.
We got 3, possible 4. The 4th person apparently is probably getting into the US at this time.
Oh, okay.
And so he's not sure he'll be able to join us, but I've given him that something. So we'll start with Jimmy, who is at the top, who will tell us about his work with environmental and climate change and all that we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kayode is the next person, who is an aeronautic engineer. Kayode, am I right?
I'm actually an electrical and computer engineer, but I worked in the aerospace industry for over 20 years.
Yes,
developing avionics. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the job that I wanted to do when I was in high school. Somebody actually got that job.
Yeah. Yes.
That was my dream.
It is a fun job, or it was. You know, I'm doing something slightly different now, but yeah. I actually chuckle because you know, when I would tell people what I was doing, because my company made avionics, electronics for flying planes, so like the computers and all the stuff pilots use. So I actually would go in the cockpit of many of the commercial plane flights. Back in the old days, before they started tightening security.
Back in the old days when I was leaving Cameroon, for the first time, my dad as a police officer came on the plane with my mom, with my younger sister in the hand. They came inside, we chatted for a long time, and then before they left, and then the plane took off.
Yeah. So it's just a very different environment. And we also used to do some space systems in the US. So, and that was also another interesting thing, because it turns out most people have never met an astronaut, but I actually used to work with them all the time. You know,
wow,
it was another icebreaker. You know, you could talk to people about that. And,
so we say that you're responsible when the plane crashes, or what?
For liability reasons, we deny all that. I don't even want to get into all that, but they actually they have people who their job is to defend these companies in lawsuits.
In cases like that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and they have all the math and statistics showing you that it's much safer to fly than to
drive.
Modes of transportation.
That's true.
Yeah, even though you have the occasional accident, and it's of course very very high profile. But they always told us, we should not speculate on anything like that because somebody will sue you for that later on. Yeah.
There was a situation when the anesthetist met a patient and told the patient that anesthesia was safer than crossing the road.
Ah.
Now, what happened was that the lady had been hit when she was crossing the road, so she just packed her load and left the operating room. It actually happened in Winnipeg. So he was trying to give an illustration to say it is safe.
It's safe, yeah.
So it's safer than crossing the road.
Yeah.
And that did not ring well, and she just packed and went. So the surgeon came and was looking for his patient. And he said, the patient said he's not doing it again. So what happened? I said, I just told her that anesthesia is safer than crossing the road. And she just, she took it literally.
Exactly.
So that was kind of a funny situation. So sometimes it's very difficult to give illustrations because you don't know what the mind of the person is.
Yeah.
We'll just wait a few more minutes. It's 6 o'clock, I guess, and then we'll wait a few more, well, 5 minutes, and hopefully we'll have one or two more. Some people join us as they promised, and have they registered?
So I don't remember how much time did you schedule for the whole meeting?
Well, 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
So it's 20 minutes each, kind of, is what you were thinking.
And then we have a question and answer at the end of the
The block.
Yeah, I felt that if you allow question and answers in between, you may have so many questions for one person, and the next person will be struggling to get on to his own session, and so So I feel that's appropriate. Well, when I start, I'll just tell you about the BCA CPA so that you would know what it's all about and what we are doing, and then we'll move from there.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody.
Yes.
Good evening.
That's it. That's going to be our host, and you probably might know her, Kayode. That's Titi Famulego.
Wow, that's going back. Yes.
You probably know her.
Yes, I do.
Eric, I have to give you a secret that two of the people here went to the same school, or three of us, secondary school. Jimmy did A-levels in FGC, and Kayode did his first 5 years in FGC, and I too did FGC. So we went to the same school.
Yeah. Wow.
However, we have not seen each other for a long time.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
I gave a talk today also that I had to go all the way back and to look to talk about my journey. So it takes you back to your friends, and I showed a picture of from high school also with some of, I mean, from when we were 14.
14. Yeah, that's a very fascinating one. Yeah. And so our host today will be Titi, and she's on the other side. And Canada is becoming more diverse, as we see. A lot of Nigerian population is increasing. It's not only the US that can boast of Nigerian population. All right, we've got two more people on the screen, so we'll just give about.
And I see Paula is there.
Paula is there, and Benga is there. So yes, it's good. So we have a few more people coming up. So maybe by 6:05 we would start and get going. So that Jimmy is 1 hour ahead of us, eh? Jimmy, what's the time there?
Just after 7.
All right, so Jimmy's at 1. You're at the same time with Winnipeg.
That's Central Time here in the US.
Yeah, Central Time.
Oh, where are you in the US? I'm in Central Time too.
Houston.
So I'm in Kansas City.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, which is the same time with Winnipeg, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also 7:04 here. Yeah.
When Winnipeg sneezes, when Minneapolis sneezes, Winnipeg catches a cold. Is that the idea? Or is it the other way?
It's probably colder over there.
I don't think so. I don't
But it's
know.
pretty cold here. It's pretty
Yeah.
cold here too. Because you guys are moving north, as you move north, it gets
Yeah.
colder.
Mhm. Got 8 people. So I think we'll be starting at a time. All right, so we're going to start a session, and the topic today is Black people in research. We have a lot more people coming on. We are fortunate to have very distinguished speakers to tell us a little bit about what they do. One of the purposes of this meeting is to be able to have a network and to be able to connect with a lot of people who do great things. Recently, we had a Black BSTEM conference, and Eric is the vice president of BSTEM in Canada. And this is basically Blacks in engineering, medicine, health sciences, and everything that has to do with research. And one of the areas we all established was that we are not getting the best at the moment. We're still kind of taking the crumbs under the table on the general sense. A few people have done very well. And the more we network and we talk to people and we are able to connect with such people, we'll be able to establish ourselves much more in North America so that people will not stay in North America for 40 years and make no impact. And so that's one of the reasons why last year we started this. BCPA is a group that was started in Saskatoon. As you know, the name sounds long. It's the Black Canadian African Caribbean Professional Association, Inc. Basically saying all of us who are Blacks, whether we're Black Canadians, Africans, Caribbeans, and we're professionals and we want to move forward, this is an avenue that we could be part of. And the aim is to create a space to celebrate what we do and allow people to excel both professionally and academically and while transforming the society. So it's not just that Black people are known for protest, they're also contributing a big thing. I remember my neighbor around here, he finds it difficult to imagine that I'm a surgeon. He always wants me to be playing CFL or NFL. I told him, well, at the age of 50 something, I don't think I can get into any team. If I could get in when I was younger. But he always comes back to that point that, oh, if you were a footballer, you'd have been better. And I said, well, that is not in my genome, but he cannot get over that. The vision is to be epicentric in the development of Black people and getting more people in the professional class, as we say. What are the values we want to inspire the next generation in the community, especially children and youth, equipping Black people in our community and getting them professionally ready for the workforce in North America. And so that's one of the things that we want to do so that our children will see Black people not just, even though we see them in the movies and we see them in the music and we see them in sports, want to see that they're everywhere else. I was telling somebody that actually most of the inventions in the world were done by Black people. Like George Washington Carver had 200 patents. And he was, if we take peanut butter today, it's George Washington Carver. If you painted your house today, it's George Washington Carver. If you have very few things, even Ford was dependent on George Washington Carver. So you have a lot of people who do not realize how much Black have contributed to the development of the world. I mean, mathematics, computers, and all that. So, and we have very elegant Black people who are going to speak. And if you want to join, you could have, there's a membership there. And obviously, for those who are not in Canada, we are thankful to Jimmy and Kayode for being able to give us some exciting information that would get Black people really ready to move the next level. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. So we'll hand over to Jimmy, who would continue. Jimmy Adegoke is a friend of mine who we've known for almost 40 years. And I was telling Eric that there was a secret there, that Jimmy, myself, and Kayode, that's Olafin Baba, went to the same high school. I mean, I don't know if Kayode met Jimmy in high school. When Jimmy was doing A-levels, probably you met each other. I'm sure you probably did. But Jimmy has done a lot of work on the climate change area that we have all been hearing about. It's not only, and he's done a lot of work in Africa. He's been much involved in what is happening in the ecosystem in West Africa. He's worked with the African Development Bank. He's worked in South Africa. He has strong connections. And he happened to have been in Nigeria, and I dragged him into this program and said, Jimmy, we want to hear from you. So I'll hand over to Jimmy Adegoke, who is a professor in Kansas.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bola. It's a joy and a privilege and an honor to be invited here and to be in your midst. I appreciate the invitation very much. I bring greetings to everybody. Springtime greetings. This is a good time of the year.
Yeah.
And I look forward to our interaction tonight. So I believe that I'm able to share my screen. So let me try that. Okay. I believe you can all see my screen now.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Good. So I thought that, perhaps rather than bore you guys with, radiative fluxes and convection and all that stuff, let me focus on the aspect of my work that has been about building partnerships, and internationally between the US here, between my university and between entities here in the US and across Africa. Like most of us on this platform, when we come here first, you go to grad school, you get your PhD, and then you spend maybe 5 to 10 years trying to establish yourself in your discipline. And so there's a lot of focus that requires. And so I did that here. I'm a professor at the University of Missouri in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. But what then happens is after you've established that foundation, you then begin to look at, well, okay, how can I benefit, where I'm from? How can I connect back with the folks that I left behind 10, 20 years ago when I have been in this country now almost 30 years. It looks like yesterday, but time really flies, right? So I'm going to start this presentation by taking you back a little bit to what my roots are, how I started out, and then talk a little bit about my science, but mostly look at some of the opportunities that I have had. And some of these are very significant opportunities to help build capacity, to help and this is both human capacity and institutional capacity in South Africa, in West Africa. And then as I get older and more senior in the discipline and in my scholarship, I have had just wonderful opportunities to connect my science to policy, to development, to the development space, to influence and to impact policy development, both at the national level, and at the continental level. In fact, Bola mentions that one of the things I've done was serve as an advisor and senior consultant with the African Development Bank. I did that 2 years ago when that was my last sabbatical. And then they've invited me back again. So in fact, from this summer, really from next week, I will be back working for the African Development Bank in a similar role, senior advisory and as a consultant. It's a full-time job, so I'm going to take a leave of absence from the university. The good thing about working in the university, right, is that it's quite flexible. You can, so I've really taken advantage of the flexibility of the university system here in North America to pursue my interests, in a variety of ways. All right. So I'm going to step through this quite quickly. So this was about almost 10 years ago now that we took this picture, 6 of my brothers, and we lost one to COVID 2 years ago, and incidentally, he was the youngest among us. But my dad in the middle there that was his 90th birthday. And he was a monarch, all right? I am an Ekiti man from Southwest Nigeria, from a local government in Kwara State, which is called Ekiti local government. Most of us Ekiti people are in what is called Ekiti State, but a few of us are in Kwara State, what is today still Kwara State. So I'm a bona fide prince, right? So I could pass the plate around and charge you guys a gate fee right now for for listening to a bona fide African prince. So that's my background. That's where I came from. My father was an educator. And then before he was crowned as the monarch of Koro Ekiti, he worked, and then he was an administrator. But education was important to him. So all of us, are fairly very well educated. That's me there with that arrow. Now, the foundation of education is similar for a lot of us who are immigrants from Nigeria, all right? It was, we can trace where we are today, right? To the sacrifice and to the commitments and the work that missionaries in the early part of last century did, These 3 guys were in their 20s, they were young guys, okay? 2 of them came from Canada, actually, and only one of them was American. And they were sent by what was called the Sudan Interior Mission. And they came to West Africa, they came to Nigeria and sort of penetrated inland. Prior to 1893, when they came, most of the missionary work was done in Lagos area, just in the coastal areas there. But these guys, young men with a lot of ambition, came in, and in the very first year, 2 of them died of malaria, you know, and Bingham was the one who was able to return, and then he went back and remobilized, and then waves and waves of additional young men and women came. And so we owe a lot to the sacrifice of these young men and women. They established the foundation of Western education upon which we stand today. So I always want to acknowledge that. So my work, all right, so I'm a climate scientist. Climate science is a very broad field, right? It deals with the atmosphere. It also deals with even the land surface and the oceans. You know, the areas of specialization of climate scientists differ, you know, based on what their interests are. But what I do looks at the lower portion of the atmosphere, you know, where clouds develop and all of that, and I look at the intersection of and the connection between human activities, the things that we do. So when we build cities, when we turn forests into agricultural landscapes, you know, those things impact the energy and moisture fluxes or exchange between the land and the atmosphere. And it impacts atmospheric processes. I do a lot of air pollution work. In fact, early this year or late last year, the US Department of State, they appointed me what is called the Air Quality Fellow to the US Consulate in Lagos. So part of the work I did in the last 2 or 3 weeks when I was in Nigeria was to work with the Lagos state government folks and the US Consulate to figure out how we can leverage American resources, technical resources, financial resources to improve the air quality outcomes of a place like Lagos. Lagos is a big mega city. So that's the kind of science that I do. And I've been lucky in pursuing this work to have been funded by a range of major funding agencies. We had 6 years of funding not too long ago from NASA, for instance, to do some work with a bunch of other colleagues. This is a piece of work we just completed a year and a half ago, big study, $20 million of funding to look at climate variability in the Missouri River Basin. So American science requires, science anywhere, it's not just American science. You know, science anywhere requires funding. It requires a lot of money to be able to push the frontiers of knowledge. And there's quite a bit of resources available here. Unfortunately, our colleagues in Africa, they're just as good as we are, they're just as smart as we are, but the resources to and the opportunities for funding are really limited. In fact, in many cases, non-existent. So the quality of their work, their output is therefore constrained by that. But one of the things that funding allows us to do is to bring in students from anywhere in the world. You know, so as an independent, as a university researcher here, so long as I have the funding, you know, not even the university president can influence what I do in my lab or who I bring in to work in my lab. So over the 20 years that I've been a professor here, at least 10 of the PhD students that have worked with me all of those years have come from Africa. I meet them when I travel to Africa for one thing or the other. I see some smart kid or some smart woman or lady, you know, or maybe a colleague of mine who is a professor there says, hey, I have this student. She's just finished her first degree or a master's degree. She has a first class, you know, I think you should look at her or look at him, you know. And so through that, I've been able to get really, really smart kids, smart young men and women who have come through over the years. These pictures you've seen, my most recent graduates, 2 of them are doctorals, they're now PhD, they're now doctors. One of them is a postdoc in St. Louis, the other one is a professor in somewhere in Georgia. One of the other ladies did a master's degree, and she took a job right here in Kansas City with a consulting company. So this is some of the things I'm really thankful and proud that we've been able to do. Really offer opportunities for other folks to leverage the platforms that we have, the funding that we're able to generate, and build careers for themselves and plot their own paths. So I'm going to quickly get through this. I'm going to skip this and talk about, I was invited by the government of South Africa in 2010. At that time, I was already chair of this department. I was a department chair here. And then South Africa came and said, hey, we need somebody to help us do some work and especially create a new center called the Applied Center for Climate and Earth System Science. So I spent 2 years in South Africa building a partnership. A partnership between all of these different universities in South Africa. All right. And 2010 was, I think, South Africa became independent in 2000 and what? 2000 and maybe 2005. No,
1994.
1994. Okay.
Yep.
So this was already about 15 years, right? Past independence. But there was still, if you look at science in South Africa at that time, it was good, but it was mostly still dominated by white folks, white South Africans. And the government was intent in trying to create opportunities for younger Black folks to be able to penetrate the science enterprise and rise through the ranks. So my job was to try to build an architecture around that facilitates mentorship, right? You have to assure the white folks that, look, we're not here to send you away. No, we actually need you. The system needs you. But you're 55, you're 60, you probably have 5 more years max or 10 in your career. Can you give us some of your time? Let's pay you some of your time and dedicate that time to mentor younger folks, okay? And so we created these types of mentoring escalator type arrangements between universities, between individuals within universities, between research teams to help advance the careers of younger South Africans, especially Black South Africans. So that was a very rewarding piece of work. I came back here. The German government was funding another program in West Africa. This time, it was a combination of about 10 countries, also focusing on climate change. But it was about capacity building. So the first thing I did, they invited, I was asked, I became the chair of the scientific advisory committee for this WASCAL. WASCAL is headquartered in Accra, okay? But one of the unique designs of this WASCAL program is that with funding from the German government, significant funding, almost 100 million euro over the last 10 years that organization has been in existence, is that they established what is called a graduate school, a graduate school in climate hosted by universities in different countries. So Nigeria has two: Federal University of Technology in Minna, Federal University of Technology in Abuja. I mean, in Akure Futa. You know. So through this way, and the interesting thing here is that a cohort of, say, doctoral students sponsored will be one student from each of the 10 countries. So if you go to the classroom and you see the group of students who are doing their PhD at FUT Akure, there are 10 West African students, one each from all of those 10 WASCO countries. You know, I loved that a lot. That was really good because these students begin their careers by building a good regional network, you know. And most of us, it took us a while. It took us years after graduating and finishing a PhD before you're able to establish a broad network. And so I did a 3-year term as a scientific advisory chair of that of this organization, and then I was invited to come and serve as the executive director, and I did that. So I left here, University of Missouri. I went to Accra. I was living in Accra for over a year, actually, leading that organization as executive director through a transition period. Okay. So those are 2 examples of how, I leverage my science to do work, that connected with, building collaboration and intersection, between institutions and even between countries, right? And that has been very rewarding, as I said earlier on. The last comment I'm going to make, I think I'm already getting close to 20 minutes, or maybe have I gone beyond, Bola?
No, I don't think so. I think we started about 6:10 for you, so it's okay.
Good. So I'm still good. So yeah. Part of what I have, I've also been. Okay, so these opportunities to work in all of these spaces, right? To do these kinds of work at the, that involved consultation, interaction at very high levels, right? In all of these countries with, I was a diplomat in Accra, for instance. I had diplomatic status because I was representing that intergovernmental organization, So I interfaced on a regular basis with ministers of environment, ministers of science and education of all of those 10 countries, that were part of the WASCA program. So that also then opened my eyes and created opportunities to do science or work at the policy level, to help develop instruments to assist some of these countries to do in how they manage climate change and how they deal with climate change issues. So this picture you're seeing now, to the left panel, there are some of you who are Nigerians who recognize Dr. Akin Adesina. He was then the Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria. And the lady beside him was the World Bank the leader of the World Bank in Nigeria. I think they call them country representative or something like that. And the World Bank Nigeria needed to develop what is called an agricultural resilience framework, okay, so that the investments of the World Bank in Nigeria, how do you protect those investments from the risk that climate represents? That means you have to understand what the risk that climate, the risk from changing climate, and you have to have ways in which you manage that risk. So that's what we did. I was asked to put a team together. That's me right there at the bottom there with some members of what we called the ACAN, Ministerial Agricultural Committee on Agricultural Resilience. So that committee developed a framework, which we call the National Agricultural Resilience Framework, which till today is guiding some of the work of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture in terms of how they deal with climate change in that sector, that agricultural sector. So that was a really important piece of work, which we continue to be very proud of. And then that same guy is now the president of the African Development Bank. So that so you can see how my connection with the bank has evolved, right? And so he knows me. I worked for him in the past. He knows the quality of the work that I do. And so when they need high-level expertise in the area of climate change, he tells his guys, go call that guy in Missouri, and they come fetch me. So that's how that works. I've also, this is the last slide, had an opportunity here in the Midwest. My research here on Midwest systems is I'm nationally recognized and known and respected as a leader in the linkage between agricultural systems, changing land use types, and climate in the United States Midwest. And so I was invited to, as an expert witness. This is Congress, okay? And this was way back. This is like 12 years ago. I was invited to Congress to testify before a special committee of Congress. This guy to the right here is Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver. He's a senior congressman. Is still there representing Missouri. And the white guy to the right here was the chair of that committee. He's now a senator, Ed Mackey. But so these are the kinds of opportunities that we have had to not only to do work, good work in the lab, computational work, science work, but to also connect that science to other spaces to influence society and to be able to have a much larger footprint and impact in terms of what we have done. So I'm going to leave it there. Back to you, Wala.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. That's been an excellent talk. Obviously, we intend to ask you questions, but we would move on to the next speaker for now. The next speaker is somebody well known to me, again, from when he was a young man. And his name is Olukayode Olofin-Boba. And he's been much into the aerospace area, even though he's a computer. He just corrected me. I thought he was an aerospace engineer, but he told me that he has been in that territory more on the computer area. And all of us get on the planes and we feel that life is safe. I remember a few years ago, I told somebody I wouldn't have a personal plane because enough headache with people who are on planes and one engine dying that I wasn't ready to be in a place where I'll be praying half of the time. Anyway, but he's telling us that it is safe. So we are going to listen to what he has to say. He has been involved in many areas of computer engineering and computer formulation. He's actually rubbed shoulders with astronauts. Some of us would want to rub shoulders with them, but he has done that too. So we'll hand over to Olukayode Olofin-Boba.
Thank you very much. And so hard to follow some of my seniors here. It's so impressive. So I'm not as organized as the last speaker. I hope I'm sharing the right screen here.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about my background. I I am an electrical and computer engineer by training, but I spent more than 20 years working in the aviation and aerospace industry in R&D for Honeywell International, which is a Fortune 100 US company. And during that time, I started there as a research scientist. Then I was the technology portfolio manager responsible for current affairs systems. And so those are the systems that pilots use to fly planes, basically. So if you ever go into the cockpit of any kind of commercial jet, you likely see some of the kind of things I was working on. And then my last role there, I was a senior manager for what was called the Human Machine Systems Aerospace Advanced Technology Group there. And we were working on technologies aligned with our cockpit systems portfolio. So that would be things like synthetic vision, controls and displays, and physiological monitoring systems. Those were primarily for space and military type applications. Before joining Honeywell, I was a research fellow at the University of Minnesota in Human Factors. And then more recently, for the last couple of years, I have been working at a small company in the Minneapolis area called Moai Technologies. So most of my work has been on what I call small business innovation research grants funded by the U.S. National Institutes of Health. I'm going to talk about a couple of those programs, but I just thought I'd discuss some of them. One of them is looking at using touchscreens and making them more approachable and usable for individuals who suffer from essential tremor. That is a problem that afflicts a lot of the population, especially as you get older. And so it's harder for them to touch the targets they want to touch. And so it's a big problem with mobile phones, for instance. And I'll talk a bit more about that particular one. Another one that we're working on is looking at creating 3D physical objects. So this is essentially 3D printing and using that for reminiscence therapy. This one is actually a phase 2 project. So that means we finished the phase 1 and the NIH liked what we did on that. I also have a newer fast track where we're looking at financial and legal education for caregivers of older adults with AD/ADRD, and we're using this embodied conversational agents to educate them. So it's kind of like an avatar. And the last one that I've been working on is an exit game project where you navigate through virtual environments to complete different cognitive tasks. That one is actually inactive because we've finished the data collection. It's a project we're doing with the University of Minnesota. And so we're just analyzing the data on that one. Okay, so I see some kind of yellow scribble on my screen. I don't know if I did that. Sorry if I did it. I don't think I did that, but it's on my screen. So hopefully the others are not seeing that. So the Small Business Innovation Research Grants from the National Institute of Health is a special grant program to encourage small businesses to develop, validate, and most importantly, commercialize new technologies that help solve significant healthcare problems. So typically we would team up with universities on these programs, and so it's a collaborative thing. We would be the primary technology developers and the university team would usually be the ones leading the study, the testing part. And if we can show that the technology is feasible and has some benefits, then we would be responsible for commercializing this. And the idea behind this is that some of these are risky enough, or nobody has shown their benefits yet in any kind of rigorous randomized trial. So the NIH provides the seed funding so that you can demonstrate that this thing will work in a well-controlled study, and then they let industry take it from there. Let's see. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of projects here, and I obviously could talk about any of them too. We could take up an hour on any of them, but I know I'm going to try and keep it move through them quickly. And anybody who is particularly interested in one of these, you can contact me later. The first one I was going to talk about is this adaptive touchscreen project. I'm the PI on this, and we teamed up with one of the other companies in the Minneapolis area called Astor Labs, and also with Allina Health in one of their rehabilitation institutes, where we are actually doing the testing here. I'm going to skip this one. So I talked about this at a high level. There are millions of people who live with essential tremor. And as you get older, the percentage of people who suffer from this increases and affects both men and women equally. Everybody uses touchscreens now, even though people take them for granted in general. Your phone has a touchscreen, your tablet, your iPad, even kiosks in where you're going shopping or at the airport. And what we've found from earlier studies is that people who have tremors have difficulty hitting the targets on those touchscreens accurately. The picture at the bottom there is kind of hard to see, but it's a heat map from an earlier experiment where it's two versions of it, and the people with essential tremor are trying to hit targets within those rectangles, but you can see that a lot of the hits are actually outside that. So what that leads to is frustration by the user, and in some cases, you're actually entering the wrong thing. I'm sure many of us have, whether you suffer from tremor or not, have had difficulty using the keyboard on your phone when you're trying to type a message to somebody. So what we are trying to do here is we're going to use sensors, some of them, and in fact, like your phones, for instance, have some inbuilt sensors. So we can track the trajectory of the finger of somebody with tremor, and by doing some signal processing, you can figure out what exactly they were trying to touch. You filter out the tremor using some clever mathematics. And so if I know what they're trying to actually touch, I can now modify the display in various ways, whether that's making targets larger or actually so that when they actually hit the screen, the target they hit on the screen is what they were trying to get to. So the objective of this study is to do a limited assessment of the feasibility of doing that kind of compensation when you compare it to a conventional touchscreen interaction. So this is just a proof of concept, and that's the phase 1 for the NIH. If this is successful, then of course they will fund the phase 2, where you have a much larger subject pool, and you're looking for something that's more statistically significant. And so I don't know that this is particularly relevant, but just quickly mention that the way we're testing in this is that they have a screen that it has kind of like an iPad type layout right now. Button will appear on it. You'll see a matrix of other buttons, and your task is to hit it as quickly as you can. Hit the button that matches the target that you've been given. And we are going to record how many times they have to try that to hit it accurately, and also the time. And then we are going to compare the adaptive one, which we are using these sensors to modify the screen they're actually trying to hit. So we're tracking the finger all the way from when the sensors start picking it up to when they hit the screen, and we're doing this math to actually predict where they're trying to hit. And then we're going to compare that to the non-compensated one, which is what you would traditionally see. And that's kind of a sample screen there. And this is the actual device. It's run with a Raspberry Pi computer in the background there, and the blue thing there has it's filled with all sorts of sensors that we're trying out. So we'll see. Yeah, so that's the first project I was going to talk about. I'm going to quickly talk about a second one, and this is this one we're creating physical objects with 3D printers to stimulate reminiscence for memory loss. This one we're doing with the University of Texas at Arlington School of Social Work and St. Louis University School of Social Work in Missouri. And the idea here is that so the people we're teaming up with, like I said, we're a technology company, we're engineers, they're social workers, they psychologists, they already do traditional reminiscence therapy, where you're somebody who's suffering from memory loss, typically from Alzheimer's disease or ADRD. They are trying to slow down the progression of that. And so it's typically verbal or using pictures. And the idea here is that if you actually have physical objects that are 3D, you'll be able to, you'll be able, because of the three-dimensionality of the objects, it's going to help in their reminiscence there. And the only type of reminiscence therapy they're doing here is what they call simple reminiscence. So it's about bringing back positive feelings about things they've done in their past, so as to, because we don't want to be creating psychological distress for people here. How am I doing for time, Dr.? Do I still have?
You have another 5 minutes. So you can
okay, all right, yeah. So let me just quickly fly through this. So we did a previous pilot study, phase 1. That was 15 people with memory loss and 13 family members. And based on that phase 1, we were able to show that first, we can use 3D printing technology to create objects of sufficient fidelity for using this reminiscence therapy. And we also were able to demonstrate that it's stimulated a positive autobiographical reminiscence experiment for the people with memory loss, their family members, and also the professional staff. And so based on the results of that phase 1, the NIH funded the phase 2, which of course it's a better designed type study and larger numbers. There's one of the lessons we learned is that we needed more structure in how we deliver the intervention and better control of the object fidelity to make this cost effective. And I'm going to skip this, skip that. So these are some of the sites where we're doing the testing here. We are testing 60 people. This actually was a larger pool, but we ran into some issues in the practical in deploying this system, because when we were trying to start phase 2 was about the same time COVID became a big problem. And so getting external people into nursing homes or assisted living facilities became something that they actually, some of them actually just said no, nobody. And so we had to do a lot of pivoting. And so working with NIH, we finally came up with a number that we thought was realistic with the new environment that we're working with. So that's how we came down to 60. We're going to have 2 groups, and I'm going to skip this. So we're going to do some pre and post intervention assessments, looking at things like cognition, their behavioral symptoms, mood, quality of life, and see if using the 3D printed objects is better than traditional reminiscence therapy for these people with memory loss. Just a couple of the 3D type systems that we're using, and we're part of this is to make sure that we can do this cost effectively. So we're not using the hundreds of $1,000 color systems. We're using the cheaper ones and trying to see that we can produce stuff of fidelity appropriate for this fast enough that we can get we can get it in the model that we propose. So I think this is my last slide. So, and I don't know what that scribble thing is, but
we saw it, but it did not affect your talk. So we're happy.
Okay, good. So
it looks quite interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much. Your talk has been very exciting. The first 2 have been really exciting, and I'm sure everybody's writing their questions down. I've written a few down. So the next speaker we have is from Saskatoon here, and he is from the Cameroon, but he's been a celebrated speaker for his work on cancer. Eric Lecong has done lots of work on cancer. He did his doctorate in Montreal and his postdoc in Harvard. And we want to know how we can know the next person who will have breast cancer. So he's going to tell us about that. Over to you, Eric.
So what do you guys see? Is the screen? Let me try.
Yeah, we see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So before I start, I have to tell you guys about my day today. So this is the meeting number 4 today. Okay. So you know. So I started the day this morning because I had an interview for the assistant dean position for a college of medicine. And the process was today. So it's like a 2-hour interview, and then I had another meeting. So this is my meeting number 4.
Is it for the research position? Is it for the research position? Is it for the research position or what?
The David Cooper position.
You're right.
Yeah. So so when I was thinking about this, I didn't know, didn't quite understand the audience and what to prepare. But I have everything in here that I can select what I think is appropriate now that I know. I think the most important thing here is that you come to a group that it's your first time coming to the group and people are seeing me for the first time. So the most important thing here is to actually go through your journey a little bit so they know a little bit about yourself. Then you can talk a little bit about what you do. And then when you come back the next time, know about you, and then we'll go from there. This title here, that's saying facing off, Breaking Bad, and freaking out in breast cancer. I'm gonna come to that towards the end, because as the talks were going on, I was putting more slides that were appropriate to today's talk. I just added them as we're going on. So I am Kiven Eric Lukong from Cameroon. I'm a professor here at the University of Saskatchewan and in the biochemistry, microbiology, and immunology department. Again, you guys already know that I come from Cameroon. I just don't know how to remove. Okay, I see. So I was born in Cameroon, and in this particular area here, and this slide I showed this morning, by the way, I just brought it out to just now. So I was born in Cameroon in Kombo here, and yeah, so I'm a Cameroonian. So in terms of my education, I went to this a Catholic boarding school in Cameroon, in Bamenda, Northwest Province, where I did my secondary and high school. This was a Catholic school, boarding school, very, very strict in every way, as you can imagine. So this picture that you see here is my actual class picture during our March past when we were 14. I'm somewhere behind there, but these are all my friends. We're all 14 or so here. So that's in Bamenda. So I actually did my secondary school and high school in that same, so 7 years, 5 years and 2 years at Sacred College. So my dad was a police officer and paid my fees here. By the time I got to high school, we were already 7. So my mom actually took over. You know what my mom did? This is what my mom did to pay my school fees. He used to fry puff. This is what actually paid my school fees. So that was the business that my mom did, just a side market, frying it, and she has a burn on her hand like that from doing this business. In any case, this was a very good school. They sacrificed a lot, and then fortunately, then being a good school, and back in the day, I think all over Africa back in the day, when the countries were quite stable and the economy was like booming, had a lot of money. People wouldn't even believe today how rich Africa was in the 70s, right? It was amazing. So I got this scholarship then to go to England. That's where I did biochemistry and French. So I did 2 degrees there. It took me 4 years to do, and was an 8-year scholarship. So from the UK, then I came to the University of Montreal, and with my BA degree here, with the BA degree, I did a master's in technical translation. With my BSc, I did a master's in biochemistry, and then, I actually started a PhD in linguistics, but I decided no, I was just gonna do 1 PhD, so I did a biochemistry. So when I finished the biochemistry, then, I had my PhD. I went to Harvard then to start my postdoctoral studies. I was working at the Primary Research Center in Framingham in Boston, and the center has since been closed for obvious reasons. It was a primary research center. We used primate for all the research that we did, and this center was perched somewhere, hidden somewhere in Framingham, between trees that people cannot even locate. So, but that's when I got introduced to tumorigenesis, started working on cancer. But then, back then I was working on the Kaposi sarcoma virus that causes the Kaposi sarcoma. So I was doing tumor virology. I couldn't bring my family there because Boston was quite expensive back in the day. And on 25,000 postdoctoral salary, I couldn't whisk my family from Montreal to Boston. So I stayed there for a while. I decided to go back. I went to Montreal at McGill. That's where I finished my postdoctoral studies. And that's where I got introduced to my current research interest, which is breast cancer. And then I started here at the University of Saskatchewan in 2009, and I became a full professor in 2020. So that picture that you guys see over there, that's like 35 years ago. And that's me today. So it's a good, it's a big shift. Anyway, I just want to say that I'm the vice president of this Canadian Black Scientist Network, which is it's a network that's similar to the network that we're in now, this association here, because it's terribly important for us, especially in terms of visibility. You know, this network, the Canadian Black Scientist Network, the mission of this network or the mission statement is to elevate, connect, make visible, and connect Blacks in STEM fields. We talk about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. That's the mission statement. And we have three main vision pillars. Number one is to increase the intake and retention of Blacks in the STEM field. Number two is to increase the intake and retention of professionals, researchers in the STEM fields. And then number three, which is very, very important, is to be able to lobby for equitable funding for professionals in the STEM field. Because one thing that's clear is that no matter how transparent this system appears to be, it is not, on paper, when you look at all the data, you see that Blacks are underfunded in every way you can think of. So this network is there to push for that representation, to increase the representation of Blacks within the STEM field. It's a very, very powerful network that we started in 2020, and it's moving very, very fast. And we had this BSTEM conference, which was our inaugural conference. The point about this conference was to celebrate Black excellence in STEM. And this was from January 30 to February 2nd. Within that 4-day conference, which we had many different speakers, including people that we considered as rising stars, Blacks that never have the opportunity to get exposure. But this conference, and I'm telling you that this conference, we've been in this business of going to conferences forever, 20 years or so. But this particular conference to me is the most important, the most complete conference that I've been part of or even attended. First, there were about 1,500 people registered for this conference. Our budget for this conference was close to 300,000. You ask yourself that, what did we do with that 300,000? First of all, you see these American Sign Language interpreters that are there. We had 3 of them, and each of them was 5,000 a day. 3 of them, why? Because we had one that's interpreting from French, with the French, another one in English, another one bilingual. So so we brought, and then we also had captions in French and English. So it's very, very good. So in the last day, which was day 4 of the conference, this is when I was heavily involved because I organized the Leadership Summit. This summit was to bring together people from different professions, leaders from different areas. We talk about academia, industry, health, in a roundtable format that with different chairs, just to discuss best practices, successes, And since we're bringing these leaders from you know, we're talking about leaders here in Canada, ask them then, what are the steps that they are taking to increase that retention, increase the intake and retentions of Black within their industry? That was important. And then we're also there to guide them to see how we can help them to push that number up. But one thing that my group, because this group is totally non-political, apolitical group, non-partisan, but I told them that we have one pillar that's important, which is increasing that funding for Blacks and Black communities. Let's get the Prime Minister. We contacted the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister had COVID. So we told him that, you know what, if you want to come, just record your closing remarks and then come. No, he said, no, he's going to show up. So yes, so Justin Trudeau was actually there because I'd already prepared. I was the one giving the closing remarks. And then he said he's coming. So I still gave my closing remark. He came and completed it. But guess what happened? When this budget came out, they increased the budget for Black organization, and that came from us. So that's something that I'm very, very proud of. So it's politics. You have to know how to take advantage of them. So this is a network that all networks here in Canada have to try, whether you are in STEM or whatever, try to connect one way or the other with this network. We are trying to create regional nodes now. We have in every province. Number one, we also have an undergraduate students network that I'm also running. We have also a youth wing of the CBSN. This youth wing, we recently had a science fair, and we managed to convince the Canada-wide science fair to actually consider the Blacks as a unit. You know, the science fair is from different regions, but we also have 3 kids there that are going there to represent us. That's another way to make sure that there are Black kids represented in Canada-wide science fair. So we're doing a lot of things. So even though I'm a breast cancer researcher, I thought that maybe it's better for me to come and talk to you a little bit about this, because it's something that connects all of us, you know. So, but at the end of the day, I still do breast cancer research. And I started this interest in breast cancer about 20 years ago. What happens is that I was in a lab in Montreal, and then I was working on a totally different project, and my supervisor came to me that, well, there's a protein that's called breast tumor kinase. That's the guy here, breast tumor kinase. It happens that this breast tumor kinase, that the expression is really high in breast cancer. But the fascinating, and what drove me to this particular protein is that if you take a normal mammary gland versus a carcinoma, and you look where BRK is, the normal no BRK is in it. But in the cancer, BRK is there. So right away, I started thinking that there's a lot to investigate here. What's it doing there? Is it there to promote the cancer, or is it there to try to stop it? You know, so that's how I developed my interest in breast cancer, and that's what got me here. So, but that BRK that I work with, it's part of a family of proteins, and that you have the BRK, you have the fin-related kinase, FRK, and then you have this SRMS. So my lab then has a lot of questions to address. If we just take BRK for one, that's high in breast cancer, you want to know what is it, how can you use this expression of BRK, even at the diagnostic level? If you take people right across that have breast cancer, and you're looking for the expression of BRK, would that expression pattern indicate something about the diagnosis of that breast cancer, or even the prognostic? If BRK is there promoting the cancer, can you target BRK for therapy? That's something that's very interesting at the clinical level. But at the bottom line is that I am a biochemist, and as a biochemist, you start looking at proteins and substrate. These guys are all enzymes. So they play some particular molecular role as enzymes. So I want to find out what are the targets that they regulate. But at the end of the day, we want to find out that this BRK that's high in breast cancer, can it regulate proliferation of breast cancer cells? If so, at the cellular level, can you translate that into the physiological level? So that's basically what my research is all about. And then I'll show you guys two pieces of data that has to do with that title, which is the breaking out, which means the BRK Breaking Bad. And we know how bad Breaking Bad is, the TV show. Then FRK is, in that title, I said freaking out. These proteins come from the same family. You look at them, they look so alike. You know, like twins that they stand there, you don't see any difference between them. But one is a killer and one is a priest, if you wish. It means that BRK is there, which is like the killer, and FRK is there to try and stop it. So there's that talk of war between them. But if you look at the proteins, you don't see that. So the two pieces of data that I'm going to show you is that we are able to show that BRK promotes tumors, but that FRK, on the other hand, is actually there to suppress the growth. So if you want to read just one thing about me, read this article, Understanding Breast Cancer, The Long and Winding Road, because I wrote the history of breast cancer, taking it from 2000 BC. And you go from 2000 BC, you see how breast cancer was diagnosed, how it was being treated and all of that, all the way to 2016, when this article came out. Very interesting. So let me show you the two pieces of data. Before I go there, you have to know that breast cancer now is the most prevalent cancer now in the world. So it's just overtook lung cancer, the most common cancer. So there are 2.2 million new cases that they identify every year. About 600,000 women die of breast cancer every year. So as much as the statistics is important, but let me just go to the data and then we go from there. So why do I study this breast cancer again? Because of that high prevalence, high mortality. They have different subtypes of breast cancer, but one of them is called triple negative, which is the one that's difficult to treat and is the most aggressive form of breast cancer. Black women are overburdened with breast cancer, and typically the triple negative breast cancer, which is more difficult to treat. So we have about 17,000 cases in Africa that you identify every year. About 75,000 women who die of it. So I wouldn't talk about that. I just want to go straight, since I talked about the breaking bad and freaking out. Let me go quick and show you maybe 3 pieces of data. So you take a normal tissue, breast tissue, and a cancer tissue, and you want to check where BRK is. You see that BRK, this brown staining, that brown staining is the expression of BRK. Only in the cancer, you don't see that staining in the normal mammary gland. If you take its brother then, FRK, and you look the same thing, FRK is high in the normal, but not here. So it clearly shows that somehow these proteins might be they are playing opposing role, whatever that role it is. Our hypothesis was that BRK plays a tumor promoting role, while FRK plays a tumor suppressor role. So the reason I just for fun stuff. The reason is it okay? Can I continue?
Yeah, continue.
Okay. So the only reason I put this picture here, and I didn't go through that my original presentation plan, was that That's Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali, and they fought twice, right? Look at how Sonny Liston looks strong and everything, but you know what happened in the end. So let's go now to that data that I was talking to you, which is very important. So now we take a breast cancer cell line, and this breast cancer cell line has little or no BRK, but it's a cancer, which means that it will grow uncontrollable. The goal for this experiment was to see that if you take that cancer cell and then you pump it with BRK, what happens to that tumor? We do that all the time in the lab. We take cell lines, and we take cell lines, this particular cell line, also cell line that was actually isolated long time ago, also for, I mean, 50 years ago for somebody that has cancer. And it proves the point that cancer cells don't die. They're alive forever. You know, unfortunately, they kill patients, but the cells themselves live on forever. Take that cell, you put BRK in it, you take the cells, then now you inject it into the mouse mammary gland, and then you observe over 2 months for the production of tumor. Normal cancer cells, that's how it looks. If you take BRK, that's not activated biochemically, it's okay. But when you activate it biochemically, you see the tumor is almost 3 times what you see in normal. So this is the first time that somebody was able to show, and my lab did, that BRK is actual tumor, is actually an oncogene. So this is for BRK. So FRK, we did the same thing with FRK. The same experiment, the same set of cell lines, we decided that now to put FRK inside. When you put FRK inside, this is now just the cells with no FRK, inject it into mouse, tumors grow. But when you take those same cells and you add FRK in it, what happens is that these tumors don't grow as big. Totally opposite of what you see with BRK, which means that while BRK promotes the growth of the tumor, FRK is there inhibiting the growth. So that shows that they are in the same family, but they work like this, opposite of each other. So for the FRK scenario, even if you go to glioblastoma, for example, which is not a breast cancer cell, and you do the same experiment where you put FRK in it, you see that FRK actually reduces the growth of those glioblastoma cells. So the question that you might ask is that therapeutically then, what can we do now that we know that BRK is there to promote it, FRK is there to suppress it? So the idea was that if you go into breast cancers, they don't express FRK. But what is stopping them? What's suppressing the expression of FRK in breast cancer? And what is actually increasing the expression of BRK in breast cancer? You want to find out what's increasing it to suppress it, find what's suppressing FRK to take it back up. So we actually identified the mechanism by which FRK is being suppressed in breast cancer and staying silent. And we're able to show that if we take a drug, then that we know that can reverse that suppression mechanism, which is called methylation. So if there are drugs that can reverse that particular mechanism, when you take those drugs and you put them in cells, you see that FRK expression starts going up in all of them. So to treat breast cancer in a way, if it's going through FRK, all you have to do is to administer this drug. FRK goes up, and when FRK goes up, we know that the tumors will start reducing. So BRK is less complicated in that BRK's expression is up already, and we know that BRK expression is up, but it has to be active for it to promote cell proliferation. So we already have inhibitors here that we've already tested, that if you take this inhibitor, you put them in a cell, you realize that BRK expression starts dropping. And if BRK expression is low, it means that the tumors will start growing, the growth will slow down. So this is basically what my lab has been working on, other things, but this is a short story about breaking out and freaking out that I wanted to show. And the conclusion of this is that when you look at it, is that So the face-off between those two brothers, which are BRK and FRK, which is Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston. So what outcome is favorable for breast cancer? The favorable outcome for breast cancer would then be to knock out BRK, this being BRK, which is the bad guy, this being FRK. If there's a way to knock it out, then it will help. It'll be favorable for you have a favorable prognosis. So yeah, so that's the talk that I prepared. These are the students that I've trained over the years. There are about 20 of them. That's it for me, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the
Eric.
Eric.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's been a pleasure. So anybody with questions, I have many questions myself, but I don't want to keep the room going. So anybody with questions? Or maybe I will start with my own question. First to Eric, my question to you is, what is it that prevents FRK from being prominent in breast cancer? Is there something, does that have something that closes the door and says, FRK, you can't operate? Because from the first picture, it looked as if FRK disappeared in normal, in the breast cancer, but was prominent in the non-breast cancer. Is there something that says that?
Is there something that are you asking about the mechanism why FRK is down?
Yes, why it disappeared completely? Because from your
picture, okay. So so cells grow, divide, and then they die also. If you take like the mammary gland, for example, right? The mammary gland, the cells there proliferate, and depending on need of the mammary gland, the cells stop also proliferating. If you are pregnant, the mammary gland the cells will proliferate, the breast get bigger, and if you are not pregnant, it goes down. So there's a mechanism there to turn it on and turn it off. Now, so which means that there are proteins within the cell that their role is there to slow down that process. So FRK, for example, is only needed when the cells starts growing, and then it comes back up to try and bring that proliferation down. So how does the cell do that? Is that when you look at a gene, for example, there's something that we call epigenetics. There are different marks on a gene, the promoter of the gene. Depending on what sort of mark you put on them, FRK has a specific mark that's called methylation. Once that methylation occurs, that gene is silent. It cannot produce that protein. We were able to show that if you go to the FRK promoter in all breast cancer cells, you will realize that all FRK genes there, they have that mark in them, that methylation mark that keeps them down. Now, that mark that you see as methylation is actually done by a protein. It's an enzyme that introduces that methylation. If you stop the activity of that enzyme, FRK now will start being produced, and that's what we showed.
So the suggestion from what I can get is that our goal should be to keep FRK working, if I was to go that way. And in keeping FRK working,
knock it down.
Then automatically BRK will not be able to work.
No, they don't necessarily work together.
Yeah,
they target them at the same time.
Okay.
Right? You can see that. So if you overexpress FRK, BRK is still there, but it depends on which one has more power.
Okay.
The best thing is to tackle both of them. So you want to increase the expression of FRK, and at the same time, you're bringing BRK down.
All right. So we also know that breast cancer is a very prominent problem in Blacks. And in Africa, we have a lot of breast cancer among people who are younger than 50 years old. When I was actually in Nigeria, we was a family, about 5 of them who had breast cancer. And so is it more prominent in Africans to have BRK?
No, it's not. So there are two articles then that you can read for me, but I'll answer that question. If you just type leucon prevalence Africa, you'll see an article that I wrote on breast cancer in Africa, and I'm giving a talk on that in Cameroon in 2 weeks because I'm traveling on Monday. So on that, I'm giving 3 talks there, one on that particular topic. Now, when you look at Africa, generally, the incidence of breast cancer is not higher there than here, right? But the prognosis is the problem. The prognosis is a problem because more than here, for example, the 5-year survivor is like 80% or so, while in Africa it's 50%. You can start seeing that there are lots of factors, the economic factors, they're not screened or diagnosed earlier, lots of factors. But to your question, that's your specific question has to do with, and what the family has to do is that once you have a history of breast cancer in your family, then you actually have to go through a few tests. And one classic example is that there is a mutation, BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutation. That's a mutation that's common and it's transmitted. So if in your family you have that history, you have to do that test. And even if you don't identify it, you already have the history, which means that instead of doing those mammography, say at the age of 45 or so, you want to drop it down to about 40 because you just want to catch it early. That's all. If we take a classic case like Angelina Jolie, and it's in that my article that they call Angelina Jolie effect. What happened is that the mom died of breast cancer, the aunt died of ovarian cancer. So what she did is that with no cancer at all, she decided to go and do a double mastectomy because they identified that gene. So this particular family that you're talking about, there is a genetic component to it. Africans are overburdened with breast cancer. They die quicker mostly because of that early diagnosis that they don't get quicker. And it depends on the subtype also.
All right. Any more questions before I?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. Thank you so much, Dr. Eric. That's very interesting. Yeah, my own question is, sorry, I don't know. My name is Femi Oluwafemi Koka. And my own question, yeah, thank you so much, Prof. My own question is, from the scientific explanation you gave, you showed the diagram where BRK, when BRK is fully blown out, we didn't see FRK at all. So my question is this, that does it mean once BRK is fully blown, there's no remedy?
So
or when okay.
So ask the question again.
Yeah, like when BRK, the diagram showed that when BRK was fully blown, we didn't see FRK at all. That means FRK was totally suppressed. So the question is, once BRK is fully out there, does it mean there's no remedy? FRK cannot be introduced to start suppressing it, or from your research, what have you found out? Is it that, okay, once BRK is there, that's terminal, then there's nothing that
not at all. So so they don't necessarily work together. So take a cell where BRK is up and is promoting cell proliferation using a different mechanism. FRK is suppressing proliferation using a different mechanism. They're not necessarily together per se. So when BRK is high, so your question is that, so when BRK is high, it depends, you can still treat those cancers, because we are treating breast cancers today with high BRK in them, which means that BRK is not the only culprit, right? So in breast cancer, there are 3 molecular subtypes. And this is very important. It's very important for everybody listening here, because there are 3 subtypes. There is estrogen positive breast cancer. There is HER2, just keep it simple, HER2 breast cancer. And then there is the triple negative type of breast cancer. Triple negative is the least common, but is the most aggressive and has no direct cure. You cannot target it. ER positive is the most common, which you see in about 70% of breast cancer cases, and you can target it for treatment. HER2 is about 25%, you can target it for treatment. Now, why are most breast cancer HER2 positive? They are HER2 positive because we talk about estrogen receptor. Because nowadays, those cases are going more and more because that particular type of breast cancer is regulated by the amount of exposure that a woman goes through in their lifetime in terms of estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone that controls that ER, that tells ER, make these mammary gland cells to grow. So estrogen becomes then the problem, and women go through that every single month. Right. So the more time that a woman has a cycle, the more time that they go through their mental cycle, the more that they expose themselves, the more that they increase that their estrogen level in their system, the higher the risk of having that ER positive breast cancer. Now, BRCA is in that ER positive breast cancer, but when you target BRCA, they're working on a slightly different mechanism, but the biggest culprit in that ER positive is actually the ER. When you hit it, the cancer reduces, but it doesn't go away completely. Why? Because there are guys like BRCA still hanging around. So the fact is that you have to target the ER, which is the main driver of the ER positive breast cancer. But at the same time, you have to pick out the BRCA, the likes of the BRCA, because if we don't do that, the cancer will come back on.
Wow. Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll kind of go to Kayode's question. I have a big question for him. I see the work you've been doing on dementia, but I'm trying to do some work on autism. And one of the reasons is because autism is 1 in 168 people who are nonverbal. And my son happens to be autistic, but one of the things we're trying to do is creating a feedback system to prevent them from having to use so much medication. That's one. And the second one is to do something like the Shazam, converting their sounds to voice, to picture and voice.
Okay.
How can you help us with that, Kayode?
It's a very interesting problem, and I will think about it. I actually have some experience with speech recognition systems, but that was in a very different context. So I have to think about this specific one, but yeah, I will talk to you some more about this. And I've written down some notes here. So
right, and then on 3D printing, I'm about to write an article on the role of introduction of 3D printing to medicine, and I'm happy that you did some work on dementia. What we have done is to use 3D printing to produce a helmet, and we're also building a laparoscopic simulator, which we are doing at the moment with SAS-Poly after we got to the proof of concept. And I think what's your thought about introducing more use of 3D printing to things that have to do with medical devices and other things?
I think it's very untapped. I actually have some colleagues who are doing really sophisticated, it's almost like, like neural brain type implants, 3D printing, that kind of thing. So there's a spectrum of things you can do, and it also depends on how much money you want to spend on the machines and what kind of technicians you have working with you. But I think it's very untapped right now. Now it's interesting the number of, like with everything else, you have you have drawbacks too, because certainly I know the environmentalists, some of them don't like it because one of them told me, she's a friend of mine, he's like, well, just what we need more plastic is the because there's a lot of plastic wasted as part of the process. But I think there's so many different things you can do to very different levels of sophistication, and unlike the way we would traditionally build parts as engineers in the past, you can customize so much for low volume type things that I think it's just it's something that's going to be here with us, and and there are many different applications already existing and that will come.
The small business innovation and NIH funding. I mean, those of us in Canada would wish we could stretch into America and drag it in.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I wasn't sure of, as to, because I know most of you are in Canada. That is something that certainly anybody who has a connection with an American university or even an American business, we are always looking for people to partner with. But in my old job, I used to work with people who were in other countries. But with this particular pool of money, we haven't yet found a way of doing that, because they want to keep the money to support US businesses. But I think there might be a way of doing something, and certainly if you have any connection with any US and I see somebody posted there that can't you be an international? Yeah, certainly you can be a collaborator. The question I always struggle with is whether we can find whether there are mechanisms to feed money to an international institution, which I could do before in my old job, but I can't. I don't yet know how to do that here, but it's something I can actually ask my boss because he's been doing this for a lot longer. And so maybe there's a way of doing that. It's just that everybody I've worked with so far is a US institution of some sort. So if it was something where we weren't paying you, like you were collaborating with us, but we weren't sending funding your way, then that's probably a simple thing. But in general, I like people to get, to have something significant they're also doing, and and they're getting, funding for, whether it's their graduate students or their lab. So I'm pretty sure we can do something that's not, if it's just a collaboration, but it's the question I'm struggling with is whether I can actually direct money to a non-US institution, and I can ask my boss about that.
Yeah, because NIH, I know last 2 years increased the funding for basic science and clinical studies by 43%, putting some millions in, while we in Canada are still struggling with about 75,000. Eric, I don't know what you have to say, but the money available to us in Canada is not as great for research, from what I can say.
It's not at all. It's not. So the budget for us is is 1 billion. I just forgot it. Just anyway, just know that it's not a okay. Let me put it this way. So the Canadian Institute of Health and Research. So each competition they can only fund about maybe 10 to 12%. But those applications, they have about 40% of them are top. So just to tell you that they only have enough money for just about 12%. And then most of the time, those big labs will keep getting it while small labs suffer. That's something that I'm fighting like you won't believe it for it to change.
Yeah. We
talked to the Prime Minister about that problem. They have a lot of money. You can know when they interest them. You see money comes out. If you know what I mean. Yeah.
All right. So Jimmy, we've been enjoying what you've been telling us about all this collaboration and money going, and I want to know, how can we do an intercontinental transfer of get funding that we can use? I know you've done lots of work in environment and all that, but we've got all this deforestation that's occurring in Africa, and little tree planting occurring there. So, and all those other things that will be good for the environment, keeping and getting money across both sides. How do we get that going?
That's an across the board problem. So Olu was exactly right about being able to the channels for funding our international partners. It's beginning to improve now. Okay. It used to be 10 years ago, there's hardly any way where you could use, say, national science. I don't do any NIH funding, but I do quite a bit of National Science Foundation, NSF funding. But they are beginning to introduce some new competitions that allow you to funnel some money to your international collaborators. Usually, what they do is, they have this bilateral arrangements between, say, US and Egypt, or US and India, whatever. So you have teams come together and write a proposal, but the money that supports the Indian guys comes from the government of India, and then the US team gets supported here. But in my own research and the networks that I'm building, what I've tried to do is to tap into a wide range of funding sources. Okay. So I have gotten money from NGS, National Geographic Society, for instance. They don't have those types of concepts. I've done field work in Africa, and I've been able to fund my African collaborators to whatever extent I wanted to, using funding from places like NGS. We're working now. I am actually putting a lot of effort into pots of money that exist in the climate change space, like in the climate finance world, and Green Climate Fund, for instance. Those funds actually, those pots of money fund African governments or African institutions. But the success rate of African institutions is like maybe 10% of Asian institutions. Okay. The reason is because the capacity to actually put, good proposals together, fundable proposals together, that capacity is limited. So you would find that in climate finance, about 60% of all of the money that goes to Africa goes to South Africa, because they are better organized. They are better, they have a history, they have a national NRF, National Research Foundation, or whatever they call it, and so their institutions, their scientists, their researchers are used to competing like we are used to here, in the West, And so when they go out internationally, competing in these pockets of funding that's available, they and their institutions tend to grab really just most of what's available. And so part of what I'm committed to doing, at least in this space of environment and climate change, is to work with institutions, help build that capacity. In fact, I have a conference in Dakar coming up in October, in August this year, and it's about the title of that workshop is Financing Coastal Resilience in West Africa. And the whole purpose is to look at these instruments. What do we have to do? How do we improve capacity, for success in tapping into this fund. So long answer to your question, but it's a real problem.
What about this tree planting? In those days, a lot of people used to, tree planting was prominent in Nigeria, for instance. I mean, in my dad's generation. And then tree cutting became prominent. And so now you hardly have trees again. The baobabs, the irokos have been chopped down. So, which I felt that they played some significant role in keeping the environment and keeping the ecosystem working. How can we reverse such a situation in a lot of West Africa states?
There are plans. There are actually big projects funded. There's the Green Wall, for instance. It's a big international funded program, and it's the intent of that is to try to halt the advance of the Sahara south by creating belts of green vegetation and forests, across the Sahel, all the way through. So there are efforts and funding to support some of those types of things. But I think it needs to. You're right that public awareness and public engagement around, just like here in the West now, people, you can go buy, different kind of lighting system, for instance, there are little things that you can do, to try to reduce your footprint, in terms of your greenhouse gas footprint. And in Africa, one of the things, anybody can plant a tree, so if you can build massive awareness around that, if the effort is put into it. So you're right.
Any questions? I see some people, I don't want to be the only one asking questions. Some very smart people are on the forum. So any questions?
I have it. Oh, sorry. My question is for Professor Jimmy, and I'm just asking relatively based on mentoring more junior faculty and you being there to support people. How open are you to people contacting you and you giving some guidance?
That's what we do. That's what we do. We're very we're not only open to it, we welcome it. We welcome it because you would not be honest with yourself if you do not acknowledge and recognize that the foundation that you stand upon, it's a foundation that others have made possible for you. So the least that you can do is to make those investments in those coming behind. So we're actively involved in doing that and invested in doing it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So we have still some 8 minutes to go. Any other questions here?
It's not a question, but I'm going to type my email in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, I think I sent that directly. Let me put it to everybody in case anybody has interest in collaborating. And I will look into the, I will ask my boss about international funding, whether we can direct some of that.
Yeah, I still have a few more questions as it is, but I mean, again, talking about what Jimmy has been doing in Africa, and I like that collaboration where all of the universities work together, like you have some in Nigeria, some in different parts of Africa. And I think you rightly said, we cannot forget where we came from. Again, the issue of training people to know how to present grants or present their proposals, which India and South Africa has done better? Are there going to be possible training programs available for, or can we develop one that will be available to help people who are in developing countries or people who are just coming here to know how to put in grants, which may be beneficial even for the BSTEM, getting more funding for us here?
Yeah, I think that's something that all of us have to be involved in one way or the other. And I think we're already doing that. I'm sure all of these guys who have spoken and others who are here, it's a no-brainer, and yeah. I mean, when grad students come here from Africa, they're smart kids. They're smart, but they come with gaps, right? So one of the things you do in your first couple of years is to bring them up to be able to write the way we write here, to write directly, to write, and once they begin to develop that confidence, then, I do not graduate PhD students, no matter how much good work you've done, without your publishing at least 2 or 3 papers. You would not, I wouldn't even present you to defend because that's how you learn, and often they also participate with me in writing grants. I was very lucky at Penn State when I did my PhD, that my advisor involved me in fact, the grants, the NSF grants that funded my first postdoc. I was a co-author of that. I was a co-writer of that grant as a grad student at Penn State. That helped me a lot. Because I came here by the time I came here, I knew what to do. I came hitting the ground running, and I got. The academic guys would know that you have a set period of time for tenure. I got early tenure here because I didn't need all of the 6 years. I only needed 4 years to put in a package that I needed to go up for tenure. But that's because of that mentorship, that training, that confidence that you need to be able to knock on those doors. So that's, I mean, you have full professors, who, not because they don't want to, but they have just not had the opportunities to learn how these skills. And so there are professors, there in universities across Africa, but they really can't put together a very serious proposal, So it's a big problem, actually, more in some countries than others, but all of us here in the diaspora can be helpful in that regard, especially those of us in academia and in industry too. It's a different kind of proposals industries write, but still you have to write it. You have to get the money.
All right. My last question goes to Eric. I've been doing some work on pancreatic cancer and looking at the relationship between the pancreatic cancer releasing something and blocking islet cells causing type 2 diabetes. Have you had any interest in that, or is there anybody interested?
No, I mean, it's easy to find people because at the end of the day, all the mechanisms are the same. All the techniques and the methodologies, they are all the same when it comes to cancer. So as long as it's cancer, it can work. And working with pancreatic cancer also, it's very, very serious. We all know about pancreatic cancer because in terms of the incident to mortality is the number one. The incident is not that high, but the mortality is almost like 90%. Which is a serious thing. So we can talk about that and see what we can do in that regard.
All right, so in the last 2 minutes, we want to thank all our speakers, Jimmy from Kansas, Olu from Minneapolis, Eric is our own Eric from Saskatoon, and want to, on behalf of the BCA CPA, we are thankful for you joining us, and it's been an exciting conversation that we've all enjoyed, and I'm sure that we'll all remember and please take note of their emails. If you have some private questions, you could send to them, and they will be very happy to respond. Thank you very much, and good night to everybody.
Thanks for inviting us. Thank you
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good night.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
Thank you to all the wonderful presenters. Thank you, the hosts. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good evening. Bye.
Very interesting.